Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to our fifth Curious Conversations session, and it's a real pleasure to welcome today Caitlyn Cherry from Consumer New Zealand. Welcome, Caitlyn. It's great to have you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Caitlyn Cherry is the head of content at Consumer New Zealand. She came to Consumer in September of last year after many years at Radio New Zealand, where she started as producer on shows like Morning Report and then 9 to Noon, before becoming the director of content for Radio New Zealand National. So again, welcome, Caitlyn, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'll just hit the share screen so that I can get started on this lovely PowerPoint, which should be big now. Great. Can you guys all see that?
Yes, it's good.
Awesome. Okay, so I just thought we'd work quite chronologically, if that's okay. So you are all hopefully aware of Consumer NZ. We used to be called the Consumers Institute. We started in 1959, and we did all sorts of stories. Obviously, stories have changed quite a lot since we did it, since we first started. But they also haven't changed in lots of ways because the same kinds of issues come up again and again. So we were the Consumer Institute. We were actually government funded a long time ago, kind of part of one of the ministries, but now we are fully member funded. We do try to get money funding from other external people to do specific pieces of research, but generally we are an NGO that is funded by the public. So we're really having a think about at the moment what we are, where we're going, and what we want to achieve, and we have to kind of rethink those things because the world is changing all the time. I mean, back when Consumer NZ started, there was no internet, no one had a computer, and there's so many other fresh issues that are affecting people, from the high number of scams that are absolutely rife, have got so much worse since COVID because people are at home. And these days no one has cash, so criminals, it's much harder to get cash the old-fashioned way of robbing a bank. They find these sneaky ways of getting you to hand over your money sometimes. So we, as you can see by this is our vision, we're redefining what it means to be a consumer by growing a marketplace of confident consumers whose collective influence is a force for good. And I'll talk about our supermarket campaign soon, but that's an example of people joining together to try and get the government to act on the supermarket duopoly so that people aren't paying such high prices. So this is an example of sort of some of the stories we've been doing recently, some of the magazine covers. So we have a magazine that comes out every 2 months, but we also have a website that has a massive array of content, from our investigations to our test results, to various campaigns and things like that. So our February-March magazine, which came out earlier this year, we had quite a few stories about just, what were some of the actual options if you do want to live more sustainably. What are the facts around it? One we did was whether having a lawn is bad. Like there's this there's been some media coverage recently about how mowing your lawn's bad for the environment. So we're just like, let's check it out. What's better, having a lawn, having a fake lawn, or having a wild meadow for all of the bees? We didn't come to any conclusion. We just presented all the options and talked to people who have each of those to just see how much work it is and what the kind of pros and cons are, because fake lawns might require no maintenance, but unless you do them properly, all the weeds come up through the plastic and it's a bit of a pain. So as I said, we're starting to think about where we are going, what we are able to achieve, and what matters to people. So we came up this year with what we call our Investigative Umbrellas, and that is to actually talk about the big picture of things that are affecting consumers most of all, and then able to go into each of those and focus some of our content. And, you know, one of the issues we have is that there's some things that are really hard to do anything about. And so we try to focus on doing stories and investigations and tests on things where we potentially can actually make a difference. So obviously housing is a really big one for a lot of people, and that's whether it's retirement villages and rest homes and the contracts for those, or whether it's the impediments to actually doing cheaper building. So in our latest magazine, we've got a really interesting story about how hard it is to get those kind of cheaper and innovative building methods like prefabrication to get insurance and to get consent from the council, because the system is very much based on the kind of old 4x2 timber framing built on site. And the world's changed quite a lot, but we've been so scared since the leaky homes crisis that anything new is like, nah, you've got to prove it for 20 years. So kind of, you know, an argument could be made that we've shot ourselves in the foot a little bit because we're being too cautious, and actually building has become incredibly expensive. There's a lack of supply, and it makes it really hard for people to enter the market. The other one is climate. So that could be anything from greenwashing, which is, you know, all the companies just leaping on board and saying their products are really special, and when they're potentially not. The issue of microplastics, that's a massive issue. There is so much in the ocean, and it does have a potential impact on human health. And so we've been taking a look at that, about what it's contaminating and what the future risks are as well. The right to repair is a really big thing for us because, as many of your members will know, products used to last a lot longer. They don't last at all anymore. And some do, but a lot don't. And we've actually done a little bit of tracking to see what happens to a broken appliance. We basically did a little experiment where we got a blender and just made them deliberately tampered with it to make a very minor, easily fixed fault. It was just like pulling a wire out. And then we tracked it where it went, and they just threw it straight in the dump. They didn't even bother trying to fix it. So we're trying to say we actually want manufacturers to be making products that last, because otherwise we're just dumping all this toxic stuff into the landfill. Cost of living, that's the real big one at the moment. That is at the top of mind for most people. So we've got a sentiment tracker where we ask at least 1,000 people about what issues are affecting them. And the cost of groceries went up from 6th or 7th last year to number 3 this year, and that was only behind rent and mortgage. So the cost of groceries is a massive issue for people, and I'll talk more about that when I talk about our supermarket campaign. Obviously, there's also housing comes into cost of living. Electricity, another piece of research we've done, where we've found that people in the poorest areas are paying the most for electricity. It seems ridiculous, doesn't it? But in most cases, people are not shopping around for a different deal that would be cheaper. So we're looking at ways that we can get that information out a bit better to some people in those communities via our Power Switch website. Another issue is digital access. You know, you absolutely need to be able to access the internet for education, especially when you're in lockdowns. And with, you know, if a family can't afford broadband, then it's not going to happen. And there's various programs that are trying to deal with that. Data is a big issue too, and that is also related to privacy. It's related to scams, misinformation, and all of those things. And just a second, I'm slightly just gonna move. That's better. And then there's public health. So public health is, you know, everything from sunscreens not meeting their SPF claims, because we've found that in many cases. One that says it's SPF 50 plus is actually maybe around 40. And so we're saying, well, you shouldn't be saying you're 50 plus if you're not 50 plus. There's various other public health issues that we focus on, and a lot of these issues cross over each other. So yeah, to the supermarkets campaign. So I hope you've all seen this. We have a petition, and we have around, last time I checked, around 70,000 signatures so far. And we are asking the government, and we're hoping they're going to act quite soon, to do more than the Commerce Commission recommended in its market study. So its market study made some recommendations, and a lot of them are good, but it stopped short at the two big ones. And the two big ones are about dealing with the hold that the duopoly has on the supply chain. So the two main supermarkets are able to prevent further competitors from coming into the market, through land banking, which the Commerce Commission does think we should deal with, but also through having a full control of the entire supply chain, right up to retail, down to the relationship with suppliers. So we're asking for consumers to be given more choice, and for the government to help pave the way for more competition in the sector, hence the supermarket petition. Just excuse me, I'll just have a wee drink. It's funny talking to people when there's no sound. It's like just talking to yourself. So housing is another really big issue. So we did some research, because we gather a lot of data, and we have a sentiment tracker, and we do a lot of research, talking to people and getting people's views, like polls effectively. And we found that the Bank of Mum and Dad is actually one of the largest owner-occupier lenders in New Zealand. So that is via not just people lending their kids money for a deposit, but also maybe letting their adult children live at home while they're saving for a deposit, or being a guarantor for their mortgage. And it's just happening more and more, we're finding, and to the point where they're above Kiwibank in terms of being an owner-occupier lender in New Zealand, in terms of how much parents are doing. I'm in the situation myself where I'm thinking with my kids that if I don't give them a head start, it's in some way, I don't know if they're going to get there. I talked before about the right to repair as well. So, this is actually a serious climate issue as well. I'm sorry, just jumped forward by mistake. Because, as I said, we are dumping a lot of this kind of e-waste into landfills. There is also a real issue with the whole business model of certain areas of technology. For example, Apple's business model was very much getting you to upgrade all the time to the next phone within a couple of years. And we like to have new phones and all of that, but what is the cost? The cost is that how many of you have old phones sitting in a drawer, or how many of your kids have old phones sitting in a drawer? Like, I've got 3 old phones sitting in a drawer because I don't know what to do with them, because I've upgraded. I'm as guilty as anybody else, but we are arguing that we need to, it's called built-in obsolescence, by the way. We want manufacturers to do better, and we want them to make things repairable. And if you can repair things, they should be able to last. I mean, it's 2022. We can make things that last. We used to make things that last. Speaking of that, we, in our latest magazine, have a really gorgeous feature about, it's a new series we're doing called Design for Life, and it's about products that stand the test of time. And my colleague Brian has done a feature on the Husqvarna series, I think it's series 20 sewing machine. It's that old, beautiful sort of metallic green sewing machine. And he's interviewed a person who repairs them. They just go forever. They're like over 50 years old. They never stop working. He's interviewed a woman who uses 3 of them in an assembly line of making various things, including coats for goats in her local area, because the goats get cold in winter. And it's so adorable. And it's nice to not just say, hey, products don't last long, this is bad. We're actually highlighting products that do stand the test of time and letting people know and sort of celebrating them, which I think is lovely as well. Data is another area, as I said. What we're finding is that there's so much competition for rentals. There's not enough stock, and we are hearing, and well, we're actually starting an investigation into this. So we do know this is happening, that young people are being asked questions beyond what they should be asked, and some are being blacklisted. And while we understand that landlords will always want to not have tenants who are bad and might, break things, we're worried that there's blacklisting of tenants who are standing up for their rights as well. And so we're taking a look at this because it's actually becoming a really difficult issue, especially in places like Wellington, where there's a real lack of supply. And for example, people are being offered rooms that have no windows and are in the middle of the house, which actually legally is not allowed to be counted as a bedroom. Health and wellbeing is another big issue for us. And I think hopefully you all knew that we did a crowdfunding. We crowdfunded for additional money to help us test more sunscreens, because testing sunscreens costs a lot. It is, we have to do 2 different labs. They're overseas. It's quite, it involves human subjects, UV lights, assessing the skin. So it's rigorous. So we crowdfunded about $55,000, which allowed us to test quite a few more sunscreens, which was really great. Huge important issue for New Zealand because of our high rates of skin cancer and melanoma. And we need to know that the products we're using actually work. So we are pushing for a mandatory standard, because at the moment sunscreens are classed as kind of in the same area as cosmetics, and we think they need to be classed in the same, have to be able to prove what they are, because they're effectively a product that is like, I'm trying to think of the words. This is where I'm not John Duffy, because he knows the categorization, and that just hasn't come to my brain. But anyway, we're saying that they should be required to meet their SPF label claims, and at the moment there's no obligation for them to do that. And so we're really the ones calling them out, and we're saying that there needs to be legislation in place so that they actually are required by law to meet what they say they are. And the other exciting thing we've done this year is created a podcast. It's called Consume This, and John is one of the stars of it, and they've discussed some fantastic issues from the cost of dying, how expensive funerals are, to a really interesting piece they're running at the moment, which is about how hard it is to go plastic free, that consumers are saying, I don't want to be buying plastic. So we actually had a look at a case study of a small company that wants to go plastic free and follow their journey of trying to cut back on plastic, and just all the massive impediments there are to that, including food safety, because if you're making food, it has to be in a sealed container, and actually taking a look at whether the alternatives are any better, or whether it's a kind of form of greenwashing. So that was really fascinating. So I'm going to stop the share now, because I've probably raced through that, but and I'm very happy to take any questions, but I haven't seen any yet.
Thank you, Caitlyn. That was great. I'm just changing my video back on again. So yeah, thank you for that. I've written down a load of questions, actually.
Oh, good.
Something I'm passionate about, particularly for seniors. But do we have any others? If you have a question, please remember to put it in the chat. Just type it in the chat.
I can't see the chat, by the way, so I'm not quite sure what it is.
We'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on that for you. So
here it is. Yeah, I have got it. No one said anything.
That's okay. One of my questions, the right to repair, talked about built-in obsolescence. I find this one quite fascinating, because I think everybody has probably run into this issue before, where you buy something then you go to repair it and it costs either a fortune or they have to order something in from some other far off place.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's possible in the future for the government to say to manufacturers, look, a washing machine must last 10 years.
Yes.
A fridge must last 10 years. If it doesn't, you need to replace it or whatever. Do you think
Well, yeah, it is reasonable, but the issue is that they have to build that into what they do. So we're saying you need to make the spare parts available. You can't just bring in a product from another country and then go, that's it. You have obligations from its sale to its repair to its disposal and its appropriate disposal. So yeah, it's a really big issue for us, and we're saying, it's happening in other countries as well, but we think that they need to provide the tools and expertise to be able to fix things as well, because these are big ticket items. They're really expensive in a lot of cases, but the other issue is environmental.
Absolutely. We have got some questions coming through.
Do you want to just read them out?
Yeah, Elizabeth is asking about battery disposal. She may have missed it, it came slightly late. Was there you guys talking about battery disposal? I know I've got 3 lithium-ion batteries from devices on my workshop because I've jimmied them out with a screwdriver, throwing the rest of the device away. I don't know what to do with the battery.
Yeah, it's a real hard one with batteries because it's quite a complicated issue that's very, very hard to safely dispose of them. I will tell you that we actually did some testing of disposable batteries, and found that the more expensive brands weren't necessarily any better than the cheaper ones. So things like heavy duty was quite meaningless. And so there's quite a lot of, I'm just on our website now having a look at it. And yeah, basically, unless you're paying for the sort of special battery type, which is a more expensive lithium battery. Lithiums are more expensive, but they're very good. Then just because something has all the big keywords about how long it lasts, it doesn't actually really mean anything. But it is really challenging to dispose of batteries because that's one of those things that we can't really solve that problem at the moment. There are some things that are just challenging and toxic, and it's a way bigger issue. And so we're definitely having a look at aspects of this, but don't have a solution to what to do with batteries just yet.
Okay. Colleen has just mentioned sustainability trusts do take batteries as a small cost to dispose of them. Thanks for that. Mick's asked about the insurance companies. Have you got them in your sites? The premiums are rocketing and they're refusing your insurers.
Yeah, in some cases it's so we do a satisfaction survey every year. And just let me find the right bit. Surveys, insurance. Okay, the last one we did, we've got a new one coming out soon, but basically people aren't massively happy with these products, with the attitudes. Interestingly, the one that's done best is the New Zealand Police Association insurer, because it's one that only police and people who work for New Zealand Police and their families can join. Also, MAS, Medical Assurance Society, and FMG, Farmers Mutual Group, have also consistently done quite well. We're doing a big story on the impact of climate change on your insurance bill, and that'll be coming out in an August, September magazine as well.
Okay. The other one, of course, that Mick mentions, and this is something that we get a lot of calls here about at Age Concern, is banks. A lot of disgruntled New Zealanders around what banks are doing, and we've had first-hand experience of that here at Age Concern, trying to switch banks. It's just been an awful process.
Oh, that's a good issue, actually, the challenge of switching banks. So the two banks that topped our latest survey were the two New Zealand banks, the Cooperative Bank and TSB. They did best. This is where we asked people about their experience with these banks. So the overall satisfaction was 86% for the Cooperative Bank, and for TSB it was 78%. So they did a lot better than all the Australian owned and other owned banks. We do quite a lot on that. But the thing is that when people join Consumer NZ, which I'd encourage you all to do, a lot of our stories come from people talking to us about things that happen to them, and then we might sort of see a pattern. And so when there's a pattern, there's actually clearly a systemic problem, and then we can often do a story and do something about it. But at the same time, we also just help individual people with various issues they might be having with their bank.
Do you speak into government reviews? I think there's a review on banking at the moment, isn't it? Does Consumer have a role in that?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if we're doing that particular one, but we do have a consumer advocate who speaks to, basically makes submissions on various issues and speaks at select committees and things like that. So yeah, it's a big part of what we do.
There's some more questions coming through. Do you know anything about beneficiaries and superannuitants having funeral insurance? I've heard that funeral insurance for beneficiaries is considered savings by WINS.
Not aware of that. I do know you can get a $2,000 funeral. WINS will pay you $2,000 towards a funeral if somebody dies close to you and you can't afford the funeral. But no, that's interesting. That your funeral insurance is considered savings.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'll have to look into that one.
I'll check it out.
We've got some more comments about batteries. Karori Library take batteries for free.
Right.
That's really good. Thank you for those comments. The supermarket issue also is a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see, I mean, for me, I guess you commonly hear about these big government reviews, or they pay millions of dollars to have some kind of analysis of what's happening, but from a consumer perspective, it doesn't ever seem to do much. Like for instance, the whole petrol review. And the same thing with the supermarkets. Nothing ever seems to really change. What's on the horizon for supermarkets? Do you think that anything can actually change or will change?
Yeah, well, the government is actually going to make an announcement in the next week or so. We've been pushing them pretty hard. So we've had meetings with the minister. He's seen our petition. We have been really specific about what we think will work, and it's not really, we're basically saying let the free market work. This is the way it is. But at the moment, it's being tied up by a duopoly. There's very little competition, and they've managed to tie up. They've basically managed to make it very, very difficult for any competitors to enter the market. And other countries have at least 3. I mean, in the UK, there's like 5 kind of major supermarkets, and not one of them has more than like a 20% share. So we are arguing that that sort of system will work better for us. It's not the golden bullet. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's not the silver bullet. That's the one. It's the but it's better than what we've got.
Yeah. Okay, good. The Consumer Guarantees Act do you know when that came in? That's quite old, isn't it?
Yeah, like I said, I only started here last year, so I am not hugely
tricky question.
I'm not a lawyer. I'm a former journalist.
I just wondered if there's any talk about revamping that or redoing that. Because
not that I know of.
It seems to be quite subjective, because the Act says that something needs to last a reasonable length of time. Well,
Yeah.
who determines what that means? Is it the consumer?
Yeah, it's quite vague, but I think it has deliberately vague because every product's different. But like, you wouldn't believe how many times we sort of back people to go, nah, you need to replace this, and then companies do. So we actually help people almost every day with products that should be replaced or fixed at no cost to the consumer, because, and the other issue we have is companies sort of pushing extended warranties on people when in most cases they are not needed because the Consumer Guarantees Act does cover them. So you are covered for longer and you don't need it, and it's just a way of kind of wringing more money out of people, especially people who aren't that savvy, and it's really not fair because often the least savvy people are the people with the least money to spare.
If anyone else has got any questions, do again put them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just keep asking mine.
Sorry.
You said you help some people. How do they get help from consumer?
Well, when you're a Consumer NZ member, you have access, you can email our advice line, and sometimes people call the advice line. And so we've got 3 staff who deal with those calls and, really go into bat for people if they need it. I mean, sometimes we've had to say to somebody, look, really sorry, you did drop it down the stairs yourself. It's your, but in many cases, we are helping people to get a fair deal. We've had a couple of cases recently, and we're going to do some stories about them. It's just appalling, where people have had debt collectors set on them for something that they're completely innocent of. So a company like an internet company that kind of really just works online has said, oh, well, when you entered your contract, you never returned the modem. And in one of these cases, the person has absolute evidence and like a transcript of the online conversation saying we've returned the modem, and them saying, yes, we've received it. And yet they didn't pass the message on. And so, this person's credit rating's affected. This company just is not playing ball and just like going, oh, yeah, sorry about that. But they're like, oh, you're still sending these people after this 22-year-old woman. So, and then we get quite cross about things like that. It's really not okay. And we've had a few more cases like that. So there's a problem there, and we will do a story about it.
How do people log on to consume this podcast? Where do they get that from?
You can get it. I don't know, wherever you normally listen to a podcast, if you're a podcast listener. So the thing with podcasts is you can listen to them on, you can listen to them on your phone, you can listen to them on the internet, you just could Google consume this podcast, but you could get it on, you go via our website. I'll just see if I can easily find it with a search.
Related to this is how much does it cost to become a member?
Okay, so funny you should mention that, because we actually can offer, just before I did this talk, I thought, you know what, it'd be really nice to be able to offer you guys a discounted membership if you wanted to join. Just give me 1 second. I just need to find the email that I got sent that has the information in it. And I'm happy to send this to you, Stephen, but
yeah, that'd be great.
So normally it is, I think it's very reasonable given you get access to all the test results plus access to the advice line. So normally it's $120 for a year for that's the full shebang, where you get the magazine every 2 months sent to your mailbox plus full access to the website at all times. And we're doing a 20% discount for people if they would like that, and it's I'll send you the promo code. So perhaps it might be easier if you are able to send that out. Would that be all right?
Yes, that's fine. Yeah, thank you. For those listening, if you do want to take advantage of that, just flick us an email. So you can send it to me, ceo@acwellington.org.nz. Like
so the other thing we do is we've got a lot of quite interesting advice on things. Like, for example, we when we remember when you had to get your vaccine passport, we did a guide of how to put it on your home, on your home screen, or how to save it and download it onto your phone. And we do these really helpful things like that, because we realize that people often just need information. So we've got a really amazing tech writer here who's just very good at interpreting things. So he does these little guides of how to avoid scams and what to look out for, and how to, we're about to make a little really easy video showing you how to stay safe, keep your privacy settings good on your phone. Like, I don't know if many of you have had the experience of having a Facebook profile cloned, and that's when people go, I've been hacked, don't answer the friend request from me. But what someone's done is they've actually just copied your profile and then friended all your friends as if they're you, and then they pretend to be you and then ask for money. But it's very easy for them to do if you have your friends list public. So all it takes is going into your settings and going make friends list private, and then any stranger doesn't know who you're friends with. So therefore, there's no point cloning your page because they'll get nothing out of it. Just little bits like that. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to do that tonight. Make all my 3 friends private. That's come to the end of our questions. I really appreciate your time. I'm going to hand over to Kirsten, who's just going to wrap it up for us.
Thanks so much, Caitlyn. That was awesome. I was particularly pleased to hear that the New Zealand community gave you guys $55,000 for the crowd-funded sunscreen research. It's melanoma is a leading cause of death in New Zealand, so to have as much research as possible into sunscreens and their effectiveness is fantastic. So look forward to hearing more about that. I love Consumer New Zealand's tenacity. Whenever John speaks, or the people that have been the boss prior to him, I just think we're very lucky to have such advocates for consumers in New Zealand. So thanks for all your work that you do. Thanks for our discounted membership. That's pretty cool. That was a nice surprise for us all. And we just thank you for the time that you've taken this afternoon at such short notice to come and speak to us all here at Age Concern Wellington. Thank you.
It was my pleasure. And look, like I said, the more members we have, the more we can do, but also we get to do the stories that affect our members. So people have a great relationship with us and tell us about things. And we can solve problems for people on a one-on-one way, but we can actually highlight systemic issues that are affecting vulnerable members of the community or affecting anybody really. And so, we just need to know about them. So we'd love to have a relationship with your team if we can.